Zoo wee mama, how's it going, everybody? I'm back with another buy or bust video to give my thoughts on the new card and whether I think it's worth picking up with your very precious resources, or if you should skip it and save your resources for a different card. So today we are looking at Supergiant. She is a 4-cost, 5-powered card with the on-reveal ability that all cards played next turn don't reveal until the game ends. Now, Supergiant is coming out the very first week of the February season alongside the Season Pass card Black Swan, but Supergiant will be going into Series 5, so she's going to cost 6,000 tokens if you get her that way. If you go for the Spotlight route, she'll be in Spotlights with Darkhawk and Zabu. Okay, those are both Series 4 cards, but they're very, very, very good Series 4 cards, and Supergiant herself can even synergize with Zabu, and they're honestly all great variants as well. So it's a pretty good Spotlight cache. And I'm going to give my thoughts on Supergiant. I'm going to give you 3 decks to try out with her, and I do have the deck codes in the description for this video. And at the end, I'll just give my final review and thoughts. I do just want to say up front that in my initial season preview video for February, I had Supergiant as like the strongest. I thought she was going to be the strongest card coming out in February, and there's a lot of people who think the same thing. I have changed my mind. I have completely flipped. The more I think about Supergiant, the worse I think she is. I now think she might be the weakest card coming out in February. I literally did a complete 180, okay? And I'll give my reasoning. If you think I'm crazy or delusional for that, I understand, okay? I know a lot of people are really excited for her, but I think she's gonna flop. I just do, and I'll go into the reasoning and details of that, but I just wanted to say it up front. I'm gonna try her, I'm gonna get her because I'm trying to keep up with the new cards, and I've got some decks to try her out in, and I kind of hope I'm wrong, but I'm a bit worried she's gonna flop. So I'll get more into that. For now, let's look at these 3 decks that I'm gonna be trying out. Alright, so first up, the deck that I'm making with this potentially very good or potentially very bad card Supergiant is this Tempo deck. Now this is something very, very similar to what I currently run. I do love Tempo and control style lists. In this case, we do have Alioth. He has very obvious synergy with Supergiant. Again, she's gonna basically delay turn 5, but all cards played on turn 5 won't reveal until after the game ends. It's like an Invisible Woman effect, okay? So even if you don't have priority on turn 6, if your opponent played a card on turn 5, let's say on the left lane, it's not gonna reveal until after turn 6. So even if you don't have priority, turn 6 you can Alioth that left lane, and he will kill their card there that they played on turn 5. Okay, if you did have priority, and they played something there on turn 6 as well, Alioth will also kill that. Remember that Alioth now kills all unrevealed cards regardless of which turn they were played, so super obvious synergy with Supergiant. And we do have Daredevil here. He's kind of nice because you're going to know what you're playing face down, and if you did get Daredevil, then you're going to know what your opponent is playing face down, and if it's worth hitting with Alioth, or if they played multiple cards, which one, right? If they played multiple small cards across different lanes, you want to know the highest value one if you choose to go with Alioth, or if they're trying to sneak Legion in there. So I think Daredevil could potentially become a bit of a package deal with Supergiant if she does end up coming down on turn 4 and not just getting Zabu'd into coming down on turn 3. Other than that, pretty straightforward Tempo control lists, just good power cards like Medusa, Miss Marvel, Legion, and Doctor Doom. And then we even have Mobius in here. I think he's going to be really good at countering Black Swan and Sarah and these other things. So this deck really puts Sarah to shame. Your opponent's not going to be playing Sarah on turn 5, but they will be playing something else. So you're going to have to account for that. Let's get into deck number 2. So for the second deck, I took a pretty standard Shuri Sauron list. I took out Enchantress and I put in Supergiant. Supergiant is really here as a backup option. So Shuri decks, you basically always want to play Shuri on turn 4 into something big like Red Skull on turn 5 and Taskmaster on turn 6. Now in the event that you don't have Shuri on turn 4, you could actually Supergiant on turn 4, play Taskmaster on turn 5, and Taskmaster will be delayed, he won't reveal, and turn 6 you can go ahead and play Blob. Okay, you could do Red Skull, but Blob's going to get bigger, so you play Blob, and then after turn 6 resolves, Taskmaster will flip over and he will copy Blob's power. So this is a trick that you can do with Invisible Woman, but Supergiant just lets you do it kind of on curve, and again, she's only gonna do it for one turn, right? It only is delaying this turn 5, and it's also going to delay it for your opponent, which could mess with them. So I think Supergiant is just a nice backup option here, although Shuri decks haven't been the strongest in the meta recently, so I'm going to have to see how this deck works out. And last up is Cerebro 5, because Supergiant has 5 power. That's basically it. She doesn't add too much value to this deck besides just being a 5 powered card. It can be nice if you do want to hide Wave. Maybe you don't want to give your opponents that discount. I mean, if you do have Dr. Doom in hand, Wave is basically just there for Doom. Otherwise, Wave doesn't really add too much value. So you could Supergiant to hide the Wave, or even, you know, save for Enchantress. And we do also have Ghost in here to help give our opponents priority to help with our Enchantress. Okay, so Ghost is now a 5 powered card, so that works out as well. I think this deck is just fun. Honestly, C5 is surprisingly good and consistent because you don't need to get Cerebro down. That's why I don't even have Luke Cage in here. If you don't get Cerebro down, it's fine. You have a bunch of 5 powered cards, and sometimes just getting like 15 or 20 power in all your lanes is good enough, and it will take some good wins against smaller powered decks that are more focused on like tech and counter stuff. So for my final review, I have Supergiant as being okay in terms of fun. You often won't know what you countered from your opponent's hand. If they were going to play Sarah on turn 5, they're probably just not going to play Sarah now because they saw you play Supergiant on turn 4. So you won't often know what she's countering, but you can hide something behind her yourself. Okay, play Supergiant kind of aggressively and offensively, like the Shuri deck where you can play Taskmaster on turn 5. You know, be sneaky with it, and that can be kind of fun, like an Invisible Woman deck, but sometimes your opponent might just Alioth you, and that's going to feel bad. Flexibility, I do think she's pretty flexible. I mean, I showed 3 very different lists, right? A Tempo list, a Shuri list, and a Cerebro 5 list. Very different. She is 4 costs. You can play her on 4, but you could hit her with Zabu and plan to play her on 3 in some decks. And she can really just fit in anything because she doesn't really just synergize with any specific cards. You know, she doesn't need to hit like ongoings or on reveals. She's just gonna delay turn 5, and if you think your deck could use that, you can put Supergiant in it. So I think she has good flexibility there. In terms of being competitive, again, I know a lot of people are gonna see this and they're gonna just think this is like a hot take. Like, how do I get to a 1-star for how strong she's gonna be in the meta that I think she's gonna be bad? Okay, I was going a bit back and forth between 1 or 2 stars, but overall, I think she's gonna flop. Now, the reason I think she's gonna flop, there's a couple. First of all, yes, she is coming into spotlights with Zabu, but it does seem like Supergiant is better played on turn 4. Okay, most 4-cost cards, you're very happy to play alongside Zabu and get them out on turn early. I'm not sure you want that for Supergiant. A lot of people are looking at this card as something that's going to counter Sarah, something that's going to counter Leech, whatever other kind of shenanigans your opponent wanted to do on turn 5. Maybe they were going to Shuri into Red Skull into Taskmaster, whatever it may be. But the problem is she treats you and your opponent the same way, and she's giving you both that information ahead of time. And I do not like this at all. Okay, if you want to counter Sarah, you can play Mobius. You could play Mobius on turn 5, the same turn that they play Sarah, or you can just play Mobius on turn 3. Mobius helps you hurt your opponent. He doesn't treat you both the same way. Supergiant reminds me a lot of Jean Grey. Jean Grey was a card that before she came out had a good amount of hype. I myself was also a bit hyped on her. I thought she was going to kind of control the meta. It just didn't happen. The big problem with Jean Grey is that she does the same thing to you and your opponent, and it turns out it's not too restrictive, but she makes it so both you and your opponent have to play your first card on her lane. But you're the one paying for Jean Grey. You're the one paying to put her in your deck as one of your 12 cards. Same thing with Supergiant. I don't want to pay for a card that's going to do the same thing to me and my opponent. Okay? When I play a card like Shang-Chi, I want it to only kill my opponent's big stuff. When I play a card like Darkhawk, I want it to only add power to my side of the board. I don't want to play a card that's going to treat me and my opponent the same way. I want to really benefit me or really discriminate against my opponent. Now, yes, if you play Supergiant on turn 4, you're not going to get leeched on turn 5. Okay, no cards will reveal. So when you play Supergiant on turn 4, if your opponent has leech in hand, maybe you're against like a high Evo Shinnot deck or something, you have hard countered their theoretical turn 5 play. Okay, previous turns they were saying, oh, I'm going to leech on turn 5, I'm going to leech on turn 5. You play Supergiant on turn 4. Turn 5, they're not going to play leech. They see your Supergiant on the board. They're going to play something else. And they're going to play something else also expecting you to play Alioth on that lane. So maybe they even play multiple smaller cards across different lanes so you can't Alioth everything. But the point is, you're countering their theoretical turn 5 play, but since Supergiant has to come down a turn early before she kicks in, your opponent is going to adjust their turn 5 play. So you're not going to hard counter their actual turn 5 play. Okay, and same thing with Sarah. Again, Mobius counters Sarah better. You could play Mobius on turn 5, the same time your opponent plays Sarah and you just screwed them over. Similar to old Wave. Wave treats you and your opponent the same way, but Wave used to make it so all cards cost 4. Okay, if it was lower cost than 4, it would go up to 4 the turn after. And if it was bigger, it'd go down to 4. Wave basically meant you can only play 1 card next turn. So if you thought you were against a Sarah deck, you would slap down Wave on turn 5. Your opponent played Sarah on turn 5. Both cards flip. Your opponent realizes they just got countered by your Wave and they retreat. Okay, they're out of there. Supergiant doesn't do that. You have to play Supergiant a turn early. So if your opponent has Sarah in hand, they're going to adjust. They just might not play Sarah. Okay, they might play something like Maximus in one lane. Now you're not getting that draw bonus from Maximus. And they'll play a Hitmonkey in a second lane. You know, they'll just spread out their power. They will change their play, and you're giving them time to do that. So I think if I am wrong on Supergiant, if she's better than I'm giving her credit for, I don't think it will be because she counters your opponent really hard. Because I don't think she does. Again, you're giving them time. You're letting them adjust. They know what's coming. You're not surprising them. They see it on turn 4 and they say, okay, I know the state of the game. This is how I need to play turn 5 now. I know this card isn't going to reveal until after the game ends. You're giving them time, and I don't like that. I think if Supergiant does turn out to be better than I'm predicting, it's because there's good combos you can hide with her on your side of the board. Okay, there's good cards you can play on turn 5 or even turn 4 that you're happy to have reveal at the end of the game, and maybe that's something I'm missing. Okay, something better than, you know, like the Taskmaster shenanigans I showed. And lastly, if you're playing Supergiant, a lot of these decks are going to run Alioth, okay? Because whatever your opponent plays on turn 5, you can Alioth it. Now again, they might spread out lanes. That's going to be the strategy. And the problem is, when your opponent sees you play Supergiant, they will expect a turn 6 Alioth. They will expect a turn 6 Alioth on the lane or one of the lanes where they played cards on turn 5. They're going to try to play around this. The problem is, your opponent could Alioth you. If you played Supergiant and you say hide Legion on like the left lane on turn 5, turn 6, again, your opponent's expecting you to play Alioth, but you're not expecting them to play Alioth as much unless they also played Supergiant. So you just might help your opponent Alioth you. And I don't like that. I really don't. Supergiant works both ways. Alioth works both ways. I don't think it's really straight simple that you play her and then you're going to get to Alioth your opponent. Sometimes she's going to screw you over. It's going to help your opponent counter you and surprise you with Alioth and steal cubes. And I think she's a bit of a trap card in that way. I think if anything, she adds a bit of redundancy to how Invisible Woman works. Again, Supergiant's only hitting 1 turn and it does affect your opponent. But if you have a deck where you wanted Invisible Woman but you didn't draw her, that could be good. But Invisible Woman took a big hit when Alioth got changed to hitting unrevealed cards. So I just don't think Supergiant is going to work out because it's giving your opponent the knowledge beforehand. They're going to know what to play around. And at most, personally, I think she might kind of change the meta a bit. If people are running Leech and Supergiant becomes really popular, they will take Leech out of their decks. But once they do that, Supergiant won't have as much stuff to counter. Okay, if the meta does have to adjust to Supergiant because of her popularity, which it could, then it will adjust to a point where you playing Supergiant doesn't benefit you any more than it does your opponent. And they can actually play something good on turn 4, and you kind of just lost yourself the game potentially on turn 4 by losing that tempo, because you had to play the card and your opponent got the benefit from it. So after all that rambling, I'm going to say that I don't think she's worth it. Okay, if you think I'm wrong, if you disagree, that's fine. And let me know in the comments down below what combo you're excited for. If you think I'm missing something really, really important, I would personally wait. If you do need Darkhawk and Zabu, then go ahead and pick up the Spotlight Caches. Those are both Series 4 cards. They cost 3,000 tokens each, but again, they're really, really good. So if you're already going after Spotlight Caches, go for it. If you think you want Supergiant and you think I'm crazy, that's fine. I would wait a couple days. Wait for her to come out, see how she does, and then decide. Okay, especially if you're going to use 6,000 tokens, I would really wait. That's a lot of tokens. You want a card to be really good. And I thought she used to be there, but now I don't. Now I am trying to get all the cards, and I do like this Zabu variant, so I will be opening Spotlight Caches, and I will be trying to get Supergiant. So I'm going to play her first week of her release with the decks that I showed in this video. Again, deck codes are in the description, and I hope she works out well. I do hope I'm wrong. Again, if I am wrong, I think it's going to be for some more offensive plays, stuff that you're purposely hiding. I just don't like that she treats you and your opponent the same way. So we'll see if I'm wrong, and if so, how wrong I am. But I would be very, very surprised if she turns out to be one of the strongest cards coming out in February. I have her at the bottom, and that's all I have to say. Okay, that's enough of my rant. This video's gone on long enough. That's my hot take for the day, I guess. So again, let me know what you think, what I'm missing, if I'm missing something, especially an aggressive combo where you can hide something to really trick your opponent. And I think the first week, you're going to see a lot of Supergiant. People are hyped for her. They are having high expectations, so we're going to see her a lot. You're going to see a lot of Alioth. So whether you're playing Supergiant or not, expect Alioth on turn 6. And we will see how it goes. So until then, stay positive. I'll see you next time.